Hi, welcome to day, I think it's day 5. Is it day 5? Day 5 or day 4 of, I think it's day 5 of reading of Story Time with Trina Deboree. So yesterday we read Stone Soup by John Muth, and we did we looked at the point of view. So hopefully you worked through that and you thought about who narrated the story, who was telling the story. Did you notice any clues about who was talking? We can usually tell that right off the bat, like right as soon as we start reading. And when it says 3 monks, Hawk, Lock, and Sue, traveled along a mountain road, they talked about cat whiskers, the color of the sun, and giving. So we can tell already that this is written by a narrator, so it's written in the third person. And so hopefully you were thinking about that, and also you were recording the page number or the section, the text or an illustration that helped you really see the narrator's point of view and what the narrator thought about maybe the people in the village of Stone Soup and how they were acting kind of in the beginning of the story, and even, how it changed. So you were going to describe that point of view, and then you were going to think about how it might be different if it were told from a different perspective. And it could have been told by one of the 3 monks. It could have been, what if story was told by you? Like, how would the perspective have been different? So hopefully you thought about all that in Stone Soup, because you're going to do that again for this version of Stone Soup. So this is the second version that we're going to read, and this one is written by Marcia Brown. And I'm not even sure if this is available anymore because it's such an old book. I feel like I've had it forever. There's so many different versions of Stone Soup. You can also find lots of them on YouTube, and they are all very good. So today we're going to do point of view again. So you're going to think about who's narrating this, and you're also going to think about how you can tell what their perspective is, like what specific thing in the story, what specific words do they use, maybe an illustration that helps you know the perspective, and then how it would be different if it was told from a different character. And then you're going to do a compare and contrast. And I made these available on my website. I made them so that you can download them. They are digital. I gave them to you digitally. So this paper is actually not available. You can do this on a Google form. So I made it so that you can do it from a distance. And in this case, what you're going to do is you're going to choose 2 of the key events, 2 things that happen in the story, and you're going to share some similarities and some differences. So you're going to pick 2 things that happen, and you're going to talk about what was the same about the books and what was different about the books, about those 2 events. So you're really focusing in on events. So I want you to be thinking about that in order to complete your compare and contrast. All right, so that would be the 2 activities. So you might want to do that in 2 days and not just 1 day, because that's a lot to do in 1 day. So let's read Stone Soup by Marcia Brown. You can already tell it looks so different because those are not 3 monks, but they are 3 people and 3 men. Three soldiers trudged down a road in a strange country. I'm going to try to do it this way this last time. They were on their way home from the wars. Besides being tired, they were hungry. In fact, they had eaten nothing for 2 days. A long time. And isn't that different already? "How I would like a good dinner tonight," said the first. "And a bed to sleep in," said the second. "But all that is impossible," said the third. "We must march on." On they marched. Suddenly, ahead of them, they saw the lights of a village. "Maybe we'll find a bite to eat there," said the first. "And a loft to sleep in," said the second. "No harm in asking," said the third. Now the peasants of that place feared strangers. When they heard that 3 soldiers were coming down the road, they talked among themselves. They feared the soldiers. Did they fear the monks in the other story? Did they let them come in? "Here come the 3 soldiers. Soldiers are always hungry, but we have little food for ourselves. And they hurried to hide their food. They pushed sacks of barley under the hay in the lofts. They lowered buckets of milk down the wells. They spread old quilts over the carrot bins. They hid their cabbages and potatoes under the beds. They hung their meat in the cellars. They had hid all they had to eat. Then they waited. The soldiers stopped first at the house of Paul and Francois. "Good evening to you," they said. "Can you spare a bit of food for 3 hungry soldiers?" "We have no food for ourselves for 3 days," said Paul. Francois made a sad face. "It has been a poor harvest." The 3 soldiers went on to the house of Albert and Louise. "Can you spare a bit of food and have you some corner where we could sleep for the night?" "Oh, no," said Albert. "We gave all we could spare to soldiers who came before you." "Our beds are full," said Louise. Not letting them have a place to stay or something to eat. At Vincent and Marie's, the answer was the same. It had been a poor harvest, and all the grain must be kept for seed, so it went all through the village. Not a peasant had any food to give away. They all had good reasons. One family had used the grain for feed, another had an old sick father to care for. All had too many mouths to feed. So from their perspective, they didn't have a lot to share. So I wonder if this was told from someone else's perspective, if maybe they would think about generosity possibly, or giving, the joy of giving to others. The villagers stood in the street and sighed. They looked as hungry as they could. The 3 soldiers talked together. Then the first soldier called out, "Good people!" The peasants drew near. "We are 3 hungry soldiers in a strange land. We have asked you for food, and you have no food. Well then, we'll have to make stone soup." The peasants stared. Stone soup? That would be something to know about. "First, we'll need a large iron pot," the soldiers said. The peasants brought the largest pot they could find. How else to cook enough? "That's none too large," said the soldiers, "but it will do, and now water to fill it and fire to heat it." The people brought the pot, and they seem like they're listening. The same or different? It took many buckets of water to fill the pot. A fire was built on the village square, and the pot was set to boil. "And now, if you please, 3 round, smooth stones." Those were easy enough to find. The peasants' eyes grew round as they watched the soldiers drop the stones into the pot. "Any soup needs salt and pepper," said the soldiers as they began to stir. Children ran to fetch salt and pepper. "Stones like these generally make good soup, but oh, if there were carrots, it would be much better." "Why, I think I have a carrot or 2, said Francois, and off she ran. She came back with her apron full of carrots from the bin beneath the red quilt. "A good stone soup should have cabbage," said the soldiers as they sliced the carrots into the pot. "But no use asking for what you don't have." "I think I could find a cabbage somewhere," said Marie, and she hurried home. Back she came with 3 cabbages from the cupboard under the bed. "If only we had a bit of pepper. a bit of beef and a few potatoes. This soup would be good enough for a rich man's table. The peasants thought that over. They remembered that there were potatoes and the sides of beef hanging in the cellars. They ran to fetch them. A rich man's soup? And all from a few stones? It seemed like magic. Did it seem like magic in the other stone soup version? Ah, sighed the soldiers as they stirred in the beef and potatoes. If we only had a little barley and a cup of milk, this soup would be fit for a king. Indeed, he asked for such a soup. Oh, indeed, he asked for just such a soup when last he dined with us. The peasants looked at each other. The soldiers had entertained the king? Well, but no use asking for what you don't have, the soldier sighed. The peasants brought their barley from the lofts, and they brought their milk from the wells. The soldiers stirred the barley and milk into the steaming broth while the peasants stared. At last the soup was ready. All of you shall taste, the soldier said. But first a table must be set. Great tables were placed in the square, and all around were lighted torches. Such a soup! How good it smelled! Truly fit for a king. But then the peasants asked themselves, would not such a soup require bread and roast and cider? Soon a banquet was spread and everyone sat down to eat. Never had there been such a feast. Never had the peasants tasted such soup, and fancy made from stones. Is this soup really made from stones? Was it made from stones in the other story? They ate and drank and ate and drank, and after that they danced. They danced and sang far into the night. At last they were tired. Then the three soldiers asked, is there not a loft where we could sleep? Let three such wise and splendid gentlemen sleep in a loft? Indeed, they must have the best beds in the village. So the first soldier slept in the priest's house. The second soldier slept in the baker's house. And the third soldier slept in the mayor's house. How is that the same or different? Was the lesson they learned similar? In the morning, the whole village gathered in the square to give them a send-off. Many thanks for what you have taught us, the peasants said to the soldiers. We shall never go hungry now that we know how to make stone from soup, or soup from stones. Oh, it's all in knowing how, said the soldiers, and off they went down the road. Such men don't grow on every bush. Ah, the end. So, definitely a different version. Totally, well, I wouldn't say totally different than this version. So think about what is the same and what was different. Maybe there were some characters that were in this story that weren't in the other story. So think about those things and you're going to compare and contrast them. And also, what did you notice about the perspective this time? All right, that covers it. So we will have a new story coming soon. Bye for now.